Happy Wednesday. Welcome back into PTN Extra. As always, I'm Evan Kamiko. That is Mike Irwin. Mike, we are back. A little week hiatus for some technical issues, but here we are. It is week 3, Mike. SEC play is this week. We're going to get to it. Arkansas goes to Ole Miss. We'll also talk some baseball, softball, as both of their SEC slates were officially announced. Baseball was announced yesterday. Softball was announced today. We'll get into that much later in the show. You'll have to stick around. We'll go to a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about that. But let's start with football. And, Mike, let's really recap. I guess the last 2 weeks as a whole in Arkansas State, the Razorbacks go in absolutely dominant in that game. They cruise past A-State. And it was a game that, again, there's controversy, right? Last game in Little Rock, what's it going to mean for the future of playing at War Memorial Stadium? And then all of a sudden you've got Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She's coming in earlier this week trying to put out, hey, I think both schools should do this every single year. Let's start there. Let's recap A-State really quickly. What are your thoughts on what Sarah Huckabee Sanders had to say and trying to push for Arkansas and Arkansas State to be yearly at War Memorial? Do you think that should be a thing, or are we done and moving on?
If all it is a suggestion, if she believes, hey, consider this. We think it would be good. I mean, she's the governor of Central Arkansas. You got the stadium, want to do something about it. I still think she hasn't looked at all the issues been involved. But if all it is a suggestion, then that's fine because it's still up to the two schools. Where I would have an issue is if they say one or the other or both say no, or they don't want to play that in Little Rock, and then she starts making a push for it. Because I don't think that's what a governor should do. I don't think you should get involved in politics. Yes, technically War Memorial Stadium is property of the state. It's part of the game, the Parks and Recreation Department or whatever. But there are other uses they could come up with that. And I believe if they continued to play there, the amount of money that would have to be put into that to make it viable, and then what, for one game a year? Because there's no other game that's going to draw that. On the other hand, the chairman of the stadium commission basically announced last week that they've been looking into maybe converting it into a soccer stadium and getting a permanent minor league soccer team to come in there. That's the whole point, to get somebody that will play regularly there, not just the occasional once-a-year football game and maybe some high school games in which it's woefully too big for that. Yeah. You know, if you reduce the size of it, then you could play high school games in there and it wouldn't look so goofy, you know, with two-thirds of the seats empty. So, but again, as long as it's a suggestion, I don't have a problem with it. It's what happens next if they say no, or one or the other says no, and then she goes, well, wait a minute here, well, I'm going to do this or that, then I wouldn't agree with that.
I will say it was nice to see the stadium filled out. We've been there in previous years. You go back to 2023, a Saturday 4 o'clock game, that stadium pretty much empty. Last year, Thursday night, it felt like nobody was tailgating, felt like nobody was there, especially in the second half, it was empty. Now, granted, you know, last year you had UAPB, smaller fan base than A-State, the year before Western Carolina. Are you really going to sit here and tell me Western Carolina fans are going to travel to Little Rock for that game? Probably not. So really good to see. It holds about 55,000. There's about 52, 53,000 there. So pretty close. I think officially they had 54, but again, that's all, you know, number of tickets sold, who scans in, who shows up, who doesn't. But to see the stadium filled for what could have been the last time was really fun to watch. And again, it allowed Arkansas the opportunity to show out in front of their fan base. Putting up 50-plus points yet again there is a step in the right direction as we get to SEC play. Yeah, you wanted to cut in?
Well, you know, I think I said on our game day show that morning, the Saturday morning, I thought it would be a 2.2 touchdown win for Arkansas. Clearly, I was really wrong about that. So here's what I would say about that from a coaching standpoint, from the standpoint of the players, because we didn't know this going in. Yeah. Sam Pittman clearly convinced a bunch of guys that honestly aren't familiar with that stadium debate. There aren't that many guys on this team from Arkansas. And yet they convinced them this is a big deal. You don't want to lose this game. So, and clearly they played like that. What does that mean for this week? If that had been a normal game, and let's say they'd been playing Pine Bluff and beat them like last year 73-0 or whatever it was, then you don't worry about having to get up the next week because, you know, now they lost that game, but Oklahoma State was a big game the next week. Yeah. Well, now you've had your big game. Now you got to turn around and have another big game. So how does it affect them? If they come out and play well this week, okay, good. If they don't, then you start looking at that game and saying maybe you shouldn't have played them at that point.
Yeah, it's the would've, could've, should'ves, right? Like we won't know until the end of the season and how it plays out. But You're right. Like, it could be a detriment to this team because they had to go further to play that game than Arkansas State had to travel.
They did.
And then you basically, if you look on a map, and I found this really interesting, the next 3 weeks, you go from like northwest Arkansas to central Arkansas, then back, then to Ole Miss, which is about an hour south of Memphis, then back, and then all the way right back again to Memphis. So you're kind of going to the same area, doing that 5.5 hour drive to essentially 2 weeks in a row and 3 weeks trying to go back. So I think rest and health will be a really big question mark. And I want to ask this before we move on to Ole Miss. Something that really struck me in this game was that when Arkansas was in the fourth quarter, their one defense was still out there. They had a big lead by then. And in back-to-back plays, Phillip Lee gets shaken up and Xavier Story Jr. gets shaken up. Luckily, both of them said after the game, Sam Pittman confirmed that, it was okay. They should be good to go for this week. But how concerning is that? Because you've lost Monte Harrison pretty much for the year. He's got a broken foot. So he'll be out, or an ankle injury, so he will be out probably for the foreseeable future. But do you think that was wise to have the one defense in the fourth quarter, even though they're still driving with the Arkansas State ones? But at that point, when you have to look ahead, because Ole Miss is coming up, it is a massive game. We'll talk about it in a second. But I just want to get your thoughts on the late game strategy by Pittman.
I mean, was it wise for Sam Pittman to continue to basically defend Taylor Green for doing crazy things like leaping over players? No, I don't agree with that. And I do think at some point you've got the game won, get your starters out of there. Now he was able to, they didn't have a lot of damage from that. So far they've been very lucky. Look, injuries are random though. You'd never know when you're going to get them.
Right. You
could get somebody hurt against the weakest team you play all year. They could get hurt in the first quarter. So I don't know that there's a guarantee that you're going to avoid injuries. They just sort of randomly happen. But still, if I put myself in his position, I'm not going to have my starters out there at that point because I know I've got the game won. And I'm going to tell Taylor Green, I don't want you leaping over people like they're a hurdle on a track. Because you can imagine what would happen to him if they catch his leg and he comes down the wrong way, and then he's lost for the year.
Yeah, and again, injuries can happen no matter what. You've already said that. We got to say the play was pretty cool. Like, it was pretty cool seeing Taylor hurdle a guy.
It was fun to watch. I saw a photograph that someone works for us, was Marty Houston took I don't know if you saw those photographs, but the one what happened to the Ole Miss player where he almost broke his neck because Taylor Green goes over the top of him and then he collides with his own player, hits his head on the guy's knee pads and gets it turned way back. Those kind of plays are dangerous. I've been told that you can't even do that in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I thought it was illegal in the college game. I don't know. Maybe it's not, or maybe they just didn't call it. I don't know what happened. But I don't like that, and I wish it was not legal because I don't think players – I know linemen can't do it. And I don't see any reason why a running back or a quarterback or a receiver should be able to leap over somebody like that.
You heard it here first on PTN Extra. Mike Irwin, not a fan of the hurdle play. Let's move on. Let's talk about Ole Miss. It's a big game, right? First SEC game. This is an Ole Miss team. Yeah, they're coming off a win at Kentucky, and Kentucky is probably the worst team in the SEC. I think that's very safe to say, considering Mississippi State went out and beat Arizona State this past weekend at home. But when you look at this Ole Miss team, Austin Simmons a little bit shaken up. They've got a good running game, and they've got a lot of former Hogs on this team, 3 this year. We'll talk about those guys in a second. What are your initial reactions to Lane Kiffin's 2025 squad?
There's no question they're not what they were offensively. They might be a little bit better defensively. That's what's impressed me watching them so far is I think they've got a really good defense. I think Arkansas has a reasonably good chance to pull off the upset. I think Arkansas is Arkansas has improved from last year. Ole Miss, not quite as good. But look at the score last year. It was the worst blowout of the year. Now the big question is, what does that mean to these players? Fernando Carmona actually came out and said, okay, it's payback time.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed that because we haven't forgotten. But then some of the other players it must have been Sam Pittman got to these guys because in an interview right after that, a couple of the other players said, nah, we're not worried about last year. But they are.
Yeah.
They have to be thinking about it. All of us remember, and I know that they do this for every game, and to me, there are things about Lane Kiffin that are just downright stupid. You're going to take a basketball goal it's one thing to do it at home. You're going to take that thing on the road, and every time one of your players does something, they run up and dunk it in front of the other team's fans, and you're running up the score and you're dunking. The dumbest thing I've ever seen. It makes no sense. You might as well just go over and do an unseemly gesture toward the other team.
Yeah.
That's not something you should do.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that drives me nuts about this guy.
So let me ask you, do you think the Arkansas players should take what happened last year? Do you think they should take that personal and bring it out to the field? Or do you like this Pittman mentality of, oh, yeah, whatever happened,
I
happened.
don't really think that's what he believes. I think he just wants to tone it down. But yes, they should do that. That was insulting. It was ridiculous. I don't care if they do it every game. You should, if you're blowing somebody out, at some point you back off. I mean, it's one thing to do that when the game is close, but you got a player making a play in a game in which you're up by 30 points and you're still going to have him over there dunking on the road and the other team's fans were watching you do that. I mean, the fans ought to just come down out of the stands and take that goal and just turn it over.
Try to trip some of the potentially trip the Ole Miss players?
I wouldn't do anything to their players, just turn the goal over.
Yeah, I do think, right, like you've got to take that seriously. You have to take offense to them coming into your house. That was the game last year where I remember, former Big Trail, now Fox 16 sports anchor Courtney Mims was like, Arkansas can get this game. We all bought into it, and then they came in, and Jackson Dart went absolutely off, and Austin Simmons even drove down the field with ease, and there was no fight from Arkansas, it felt like, in that game. So to your point, you want to bring that out this year. You want to bring that back.
Well, Arkansas played reasonably well offensively. I was reading a thread on Hogville where they were acting like, they said that something about, there was a reference among Ole Miss fans that they somehow had Arkansas's signs or play. They knew what plays were coming. Arkansas scored points in that game. That wasn't the issue. The issue was on defense. Now, what could have happened is they could have been, since you have players that were on Arkansas's team, now you're on Ole Miss's team, they might have known something about the defensive signals. They might have told the offense, this is what it means when you do this or that.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, you better change your signals up this week.
Because notably, to your point on that, Pooh Paul last year or 2 years ago was an Arkansas Razorback, then went to Ole Miss. And now this year, you've got three guys from last year, Jalen Braxton and Luke Haz. The two of them have not played so far this season. And you have Patrick Kudus from the offensive line, who right now is Ole Miss's worst offensive lineman when it comes to grading by PFF. Do you care about that? What's kind of the mentality with these guys now
they
must,
who've gone
from
they
here
must
to there?
have no depth on the offensive line because he should have been benched. They've had at least two interceptions that are his fault because he absolutely whiffed on a guy over him who just went right through him and put pressure on the quarterback, and he throws an interception. That's happened twice.
Yeah.
So, but as far as I know, he's still the starter there, which tells me they don't have any depth. I hope Cam Ball is over him, and I hope Cam Ball blows right by him and sacks the quarterback, produces a fumble or whatever, and Arkansas gets a turnover.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be fun to watch the revenge game. We're going to take a break here on PTN Extra. When we come back, we're going to the Diamond, talking baseball, softball. Those schedules are out. Mike Irwin and Evan Camico hanging out with you on PTN Extra. We'll be back after this. Welcome back into PTN Extra. Evan Camico and Mike Irwin hanging out with you on this gorgeous Wednesday here in Northwest Arkansas in our PTN studios. Mike, we've talked football already. Seems like all the gambit's happening, right? SEC opener, Taylon Green on ESPN getting finally recognition that he probably deserves, whether that's for the Heisman, whether that's for the quarterback power rankings in the SEC. Slowly and surely, you play well enough, you get the recognition. But we're done talking about football. Let's talk baseball. Let's talk softball. Arkansas baseball's schedule for 2026 came out yesterday. Let's take a look at it, Mike. So far, right away, what jumps out at you?
Well, you've got probably the three teams Razorback baseball fans care the most about, which would Tennessee, Texas, and LSU are not on there. What?
Yeah.
So there's been an immediate negative reaction by the fans. Now, my guess is Van Horn's looking at that schedule and going, all right, okay, looking pretty good. We got the regular season, we got a much better chance of winning the league this year. You still got to win in postseason. You still get sent places. You may end up playing some of those teams again. We saw it last year. But that has upset a lot of Razorback fans. And I find this really interesting because up till now, what has been the narrative in almost any sport? It's always been, what's going on in the SEC office? They always give us the toughest basketball schedule, the toughest football schedule, the toughest baseball schedule, the toughest softball schedule. They just hate us. So finally, you get a good one, and now people are mad about that. I don't think you can please some of these people.
No, it's really funny when you look at it, because that was my first reaction yesterday when I'm looking at it. Mississippi State off the rip for the SEC home opener. That's going to be a fantastic series. Brian O'Connor coming over for Virginia, bringing the #1 portal class to Starkville, trying to revamp and re-energize that state baseball program that when it's rocking, it is one of the best in the country.
Right.
And that seems to really be your hardest home series, it feels like, because Georgia will be really fun at home. You've got Florida at home as well. That's really the three marquee ones. Then you're on the road. I mean, Auburn on the road is going to be tough. You still have 12 opponents that you'll face this season that were NCAA tournament teams. But to your point, it's like the reigning national championships, you're not going to see them. You're not going to see Vanderbilt. You're not going to see Texas and Jim Schlossnagle. You're not going to see Tennessee and Tony V. And you're also a team that nobody's thought of right now. You're not seeing Texas A&M and Michael Early in year 2, who that's a prove it year down in College Station that they need to win this year for him to keep his job. So it's really interesting the polarity of Arkansas fans of like, well, on one hand, well, we're mad that they gave us Texas and Tennessee to close out the year last year. That's so unfair. And on the other hand, now you don't have them and you're like, you should be happy. Like, this is a great schedule. Arkansas, the SEC gods decided to be nice to Arkansas for once, and fans are mad. I don't get it, and that makes me upset.
Like I said, I would have thought the reaction would be, it's about time. Mm-hmm. And instead, it's like, what? We're not playing them? Wait a minute. We want to play them. Well, you're not playing them. You're in the stands.
Yeah.
You know, it's the team that has to play them.
Exactly. And then you've also got Missouri and Kentucky. You end the year at Kentucky, SEC tournament. You're at Missouri this year. Again, they open the season as well. Keep that in mind. That's their biggest non-conference test is Oklahoma
it's almost
State,
like
TCU,
even the good
Texas Tech.
The good programs you're playing them at home, and so you go on the road and play teams like Missouri that you can beat on the road.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like somebody looked at that schedule and went, let's make this as good as we can for Arkansas. And I still can't believe it. I really can't. I don't even know how that was done. If I'm one of the other, if I'm Tony Vitello, I look at that and go, what's going on here? What did you just do?
Yeah.
Is Arkansas in your pocket? I mean, did Dave Van Horn, slip you a 20? What's going on here?
And the funny thing is when you look at this Arkansas baseball roster, like, you can make the argument that maybe this is going to be a down year for them. The portal class wasn't that strong. There's a lot of questions in starting pitching. As much as we want to avoid those and say Gabe Gackel's going to be great in year 3, Cole Gibler is going to be great in year 2, we saw Gackel struggle to make the jump last year to the starting rotation. You're going to assume Gibler might have problems as well. And Parker Coyle, is he going to be your number 3? Hunter Dietz looks healthy finally. Is he going to be your number 3? There's a lot of potential, but you won't really know the Arkansas potential until late in the year, really the SEC tournament, because outside that Mississippi State and Florida stretch early on, you're not challenged that hard because the non-conference schedule is also pretty easy.
Well, now what you've got fans saying, I've read some of this, okay, this is the year. This is the year Arkansas wins the national championship, and then Dave Van Horn retires. Mm-hmm. I don't think he retires.
No.
I think if he wins one, he's going to try to win another one and another one. He's competitive.
And my counter to that, right, is fans are saying that, right? Like, oh, we're going to easy schedule. We're going to ride off into the sunset with a national championship. To my whole point 20 seconds ago, you don't know what this Arkansas baseball team truly is going to be because you're not going to be facing the top teams in the SEC unless you face a Tennessee on the road or Texas. Even at home, you won't really know how good this team is, right? Like, and I think, again, all SEC series are hard. But it's different when you play these top names. Look at Mississippi State. They have a gauntlet. I think they face every team that we've mentioned that Arkansas doesn't play. You're going to know a lot more about what Mississippi State is compared to the best teams in the SEC. Because let's be real, Mike. Is South Carolina, Kentucky, and Missouri going to be any good next year? Probably not.
Well, and let's say Arkansas does win the SEC. Let's say they win the SEC tournament. Then you have no idea what the NCAA tournament bracket is going to look like because ultimately that has a lot to do with whether you win the national championship or not. So we're not going to see that until the whole thing is over and you get to the end of the year. So you can sit around and talk about what the regular season schedule looks like all you want. That's got nothing to do with what happens when the season gets to the real part, which is postseason NCAA tournament play. Who's in your bracket? What's your bracket look like? What's the team across from you? What's the super regional look like? And then if you get to Omaha, what's that field like?
We won't know that until June. There's a lot longer till we get there, but always fun to talk some baseball. Mike, let's shift to softball. That schedule also just got announced. Really the big marquee series. They open at home for the first time since 2023. They go on the road to Oklahoma. They're also on the road to Texas. It is a tough schedule. We talked about baseball having it easy. Softball definitely does not. Your quick thoughts on Courtney Deifel's schedule?
Well, again, regular season doesn't really matter as long as you're up there. You don't have to beat Oklahoma. You don't have to beat Texas. What you have to do is get a regional, win the regional, and then what they had never been able to do, win your super.
Yeah, and that'll be a really fun debate whether or not they can get out of the super regional. You'd like to think they've got the team to do it. They've got the pitching staff. Everybody is coming back. Again, both of those, there's a lot of time left. We are at fall season. It is, let me check my watch, September 10th, and we're already talking about baseball and softball. It feels like it's right around the corner. Other things for the Razorbacks this weekend, you've got soccer opening the SEC slate tomorrow night. That is against SEC foe Florida. Volleyball just fell. Mike, you were also writing an article. We didn't talk about it much in the A block. Let's talk about it right now to wrap up our show on Lane Kiffin and what could have been if he came to Fayetteville. What can you tell people at home? What should they look out for on our website?
Well, first of all, if you go throughout the 50 years that I've covered the program, there have been these moments in which things happened. And the whole purpose of these series of articles is to look at a key moment in the history of Razorback sports and say, okay, Jack Crow gets fired one game into the 92 season. What if he didn't get fired? And then you kind of go from there. In this particular case, I still believe, based on what I was told at the time, that Lane Kiffin initially told Arkansas he looked at a contract, agreed to a verbal contract, and was, in Hunter Yurachek's mind, on his way to accepting. Then Yurachek sent him a contract to sign, an actual written contract, never sent it back. When he called him, he said, well, Ole Miss is involved. You got to talk to my agent. And that really made Hunter Yurachek mad. He never checked with him again. He went and started looking at other candidates. And interestingly enough, Sam Pittman was hired a day or two before Kiffin. So I still think there was a way, if he had the money and if he could get the money, to go and take Lane Kiffin away from Ole Miss. I don't think Kiffin cared pretty much where he went. Either school, I think he would have been okay. He just wanted the best situation, and he got the best situation from him. His winning percentage there is 72%. That's just 2% lower than Ken Hatfield, 74%, the best winning percentage in the history of this school. And so what if this week it was Lane Kiffin going up against Ole Miss, and Arkansas didn't have that one game above 500 record over the last 5 previous seasons? What if it was 72%?
Yeah.
I mean, the difference would be enormous.
I mean, Lane Kiffin, if you look at it, he is 46 and 18 right now as the head coach at Ole Miss. So really interesting, really fun stuff. If you want to see that, we've got that over on our website a little bit later. So that is going to do it for PTN Extra this week. Mike, anything we've missed? Anything else you want to throw in there?
You've thought of all of it.
I think we have, yeah. It's been a pretty successful Wednesday. Arkansas takes on Ole Miss this weekend. Week 3, the SEC opener, should be fun. For Mike Irwin, our entire production team, I'm Evan Camico. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back here next Wednesday on PTN Extra.